morning to the Honorable Ministers of the Council, members of the media, online viewers, radio listeners via St. Martin Gov Radio, 107.9 FM, and other radio stations. I'm Rolika Roach, and welcome to the live Council of Ministers press briefing for today, Wednesday, February 20th, 2019. At this time, I invite the Prime Minister and Minister of General Affairs, the Honorable Leona Romeo Marlin, to address you. Prime Minister.
Good morning to all my colleagues, members of the press. Good morning, St. Martin. The Council of Ministers has taken note of the arrest of Member of Parliament Theodore Heiliger on Tuesday morning, February 19th. The Council of Ministers recognizes that we all must allow room for the wheels of justice to turn and for Mr. Heiliger to have his day to defend himself. The Council of Ministers wishes Mr. Heiliger, his family, friends, and colleagues much strength during this period of uncertainty that they face. In the meanwhile, we of the Council of Ministers wish to ensure the people of St. Martin that we will continue to work diligently on the task at hand of managing the daily governmental affairs of this country. We will continue to forge forward and with the rebuilding of this nation. This task requires us all to unite and focus on one common goal, the goal being stability and progress for our island, St. Martin. Our commitment remains primarily to the people of this country that we have the honor of serving. Thank you.
Thank you, Prime Minister, for your opening remarks. At this time, I invite the Minister of Tourism, Economic Affairs, Transport, and Telecommunication, the Honorable Stuart Johnson. Minister Johnson.
Radio listeners, those viewing via Facebook and television, members of the press, my colleagues in the Council, people of St. Martin, good morning. I begin today's announcements on a somber note. As you know by now, our country is presently going through a difficult time, enduring the detention of one of our country's greatest political leaders. During this challenging time, I wish much strength to his wife, Grisha, children, and the family of MP Theodore Heiliger. Today, I would like to give you some updates on a series of meetings which a delegation consisting of the airport, tourism department officials led by my person held with senior executives of several key airlines during my recent trip to Routes Americas held in Quebec, Canada. I am pleased to report that several airlines will be resuming service this year. We have also met with some new airlines with whom we expect to finalize plans with over the coming months for them to begin flying to our destination. I must say that success of these meetings and their commitment to fly to our destination is based on the increased arrival numbers at the Princess Juliana International Airport since we were able to move back into the main terminal building. It is also a result of the hard work and dedication of those resort operators who remained on the island post-Hurricane Irma and have been rebuilding. Beginning February 28th, Sunwing will return to St. Martin with its weekly flight. The airline will resume its famed Toronto and Montreal weekly service, flying two Boeing 737-800 series with a capacity of 189 seats each. The return of Sunwing is especially crucial for resorts such as Sonesta Maho, DV Little Bay Resort, Ocean Point, Simpson Bay Resort, and Princess Heights. During the visit, we also held discussions with American Airlines, who are very pleased with our increased load factors from PJIA and the progress we have made as it relates to rebuilding the destination. In fact, the airline is looking at returning its second flight by the fourth quarter of this year. That second Miami flight will leave to St. Martin in the morning to create better connectivity options for travelers throughout Miami, while the airline will maintain its current flight departure of 4 p.m. from St. Martin, 4:30 p.m. The second flight will depart Miami around 8 a.m., with a return departure from St. Martin at around 1 p.m. American Airlines, based on analytical reports, are pulling all evening flight layovers in the region, but increasing its flight capacity to our destination. We are also excited to speak with a new airline, Flycana. This airline has an ambitious program launching 50 destinations by 2023 with connections to Latin America, Canada, North America, and the Caribbean. They intend to start by the fourth quarter of this year using an Airbus 320neo and 737s, with St. Martin as one of their first destinations. The launch of JetBlue's Fort Lauderdale-St. Martin route on February 14th was a significant achievement for St. Martin, and already the route is performing as positively as expected. During our meeting, the airline indicated that March and April numbers are already looking positive. JetBlue is also looking to increase the frequencies in airlifts from other routes such as Boston and JFK by the end of this year. Starting in April, the Boston-St. Martin route will increase to about an average of 3 times weekly. Some airlines, such as Copa and Delta Airlines, are still monitoring room inventory and anticipate by the end of 2020 that they will be able to resume flying regular flights to our destination. Copa, for example, plans to return its 4 times a week flight during the high season and 2 times weekly for the low season early next year. In addition to these airlines committing to returning to St. Martin, we held very positive discussions with regional airlines such as Liat and Caribbean Airlines regarding creating new routes for the destinations from Jamaica, the British Virgin Islands, Barbados, and Trinidad, as this is important as we rebuild our regional hub function. We also received positive reviews from other international airlines, including Lufthansa Airlines, who are looking to travel or to return to our destination after many years. This is mainly due to the airport's business case, which was presented showing the significant benefit of U.S. preclearance, the visitor experience, and these airlines' viability. In fact, all U.S.-based carriers indicated strongly the need for U.S. preclearance and its benefits both for the destination and their respective airlines. This line of interest is also consistent with our work thus far to attract new hotels. The overall sustainable redevelopment plan of this government is naturally dependent on these crucial elements coming together. At this time, I look forward from any questions from the press. I thank you.
Thank you, Minister Johnson, for your opening remarks. At this time, I invite the Minister of Education, Culture, Youth and Sport, the Honorable Wycliffe Smith, to address you. Minister Smith.
Thank you very much, Ms. Roach. Good morning to all, to my colleague ministers, to the Department of Communication, to the members of the press, to the people listening and watching. Good morning, Sualiga. The Department of Culture of the Ministry of Education, Culture, Youth and Sport will be inviting, or is inviting, all cultural foundations, associations, and groups to a meeting this afternoon at 5:30 p.m. at the John Larmony Center in Phillipsburg. And this is to give information about the participation in the Carnival Cultural Parade, which will be taking place on April 28th. In collaboration with the St. Martin Carnival Development Foundation. So the Department of Culture will be, in collaboration with this foundation, organizing a cultural parade, and we would like all cultural groups to participate. For more information, you can contact Gina Illich or Clara Reyes at numbers 520 5340 or 520 7196 at the Department of Culture. And as the leader of the St. Martin Christian Party, I am aware that the recent arrest of the leader of our coalition partner, the United Democrats, the Honorable Member of Parliament, Theodore Heiliger, has brought cause for concern in the stability of our government. Some persons may question the possible repercussions for the SMCP based on our principles and the founding values that we put forward to the people of St. Martin. The St. Martin Christian Party remains committed to the governing accord, resolute in our determination to provide our country with a stable government with the 2018-2022 governing program as the focus of our united efforts. It is unfortunate that MP Heiliger is faced with these personal challenges at this time, but we must allow time for the due process of justice to take its course. May wisdom prevail, may justice be balanced, and may truth give freedom. It is my firm conviction that the coalition of the United Christian Democrats has the rebuilding of a sustainable St. Martin as our main goal. For the good of the country and for the progressive work of the people, the SMCP, as well as other members of the coalition, recognize that the personal situation of one member will not be allowed to hinder the great work that is ahead. We wish MP Heiliger Godspeed, but make no mistake, while he works out his situation, myself, SMCP, and all our representatives remain united and focused, united in our efforts to properly represent the people of St. Martin and focused on the rebuilding of this nation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister Smith, for your opening remarks. At this time, I invite the Minister of Public Health, Social Development, and Labor, the Honorable Emma Lee, to address you. Minister Lee.
Good morning. Thank you very much. Greetings to fellow Council of Ministers. I have two brief topics to touch on. Number one, I'd like to congratulate the AUC in collaboration with the Harvard Medical Facility Physicians of Beth Israel. In March 8th to 11, they're going to be hosting an international conference on disaster medicine and hurricane resiliency. So the International Conference on Disaster Medicine and Resiliency brings together physicians, nurses, educators, and other professionals focused on patient care to explore disaster medicine in the context of hurricanes and other severe weather events. Through workshops, plenaries, and panel discussions, attendees will gain essential emergency planning and preparation skills to better understand the role of disaster medicine in effective healthcare management. And as I mentioned, this is a collaborative effort between the AUC and Harvard Medical Facilities physicians. This is actually their first major initiative for their newly established Caribbean Center for Disaster Medicine, which fosters cooperation between professionals responsible for healthcare delivery, disaster preparedness, emergency response, and medical educators. This is open to the public. There is a local resident rate. I will include the information in our press release, but they can contact the AUC directly, and I'll provide the email addresses and telephone numbers. So I think this is something that is well worth for people on the island to attend. It's something certainly I encourage the ministries, the two ESF groups, as well as ambulance department to attend so that we can be better prepared for hurricane seasons. Attached to this, the PAHO will have a small delegation attending this conference. So as a result of our conversations recently where PAHO was here to visit about how we could better cooperate between the Ministry of VSA and PAHO, one of the points that we discussed is their assistance in helping us to explain to the public, to educate the public and stakeholders about our legislative process with the general health insurance. So the general health insurance legislation is currently at the Council of Advice. We expect that advice to be completed by them in March, in which case we then need to respond to it, and then it needs to go to the governor, and then we begin its legislative track through Parliament. So we would expect sometime April or May to begin our legislative discussions. So the PAHO will be assisting since they're going to be here for the disaster conference anyways, so they have a small delegation that will help us to go out into the community and speak to people, and also we have a higher level delegation coming in the beginning of April. And that delegation will consist of Dr. James Fitzgerald, who's Director of Health Systems and Services, Dr. Erica Wheeler, who's representative of St. Martin and Regional Director for the Dutch Caribbean, as well as Dr. Stanley Lalta, who's a public health economist. And actually, I've known Dr. Lalta through a number of these health financing conferences that have been set up throughout the Caribbean, and he really does bring a wealth of information. He's based at the UE in Trinidad, and his efforts in terms of helping the Caribbean to better understand the pros and cons of each of the different healthcare systems has been tremendous, and his input in terms of our development of our general health insurance has been invaluable. So we have two groups coming, and the idea is they will help us to educate the public and to explain what is universal health insurance. And in a nutshell, it really is based on, number one, it's based on our governing program, where the part of the objective of this government is to ensure that everybody has access to quality health care close to home. So while we're working on transforming our healthcare system with the new hospital, a referral system that's being revised completely, looking at our prescription drug programs, looking at the relationship between SZV and the care providers, all of these are things that are happening parallel, but also we need to look at how we finance our healthcare system, who has access to our healthcare system, how does that actually work, right? So the general health insurance legislation that we have, I believe, is transformational. And if you look everywhere around the world, it has been battleground legislation. It's been something that has been contentious within the community. It's the haves and have-nots. It's the people who have access, the people who don't, the people who think they take care of themselves, and the people who have other illnesses. There's a very personal discussion in terms of how we finance healthcare, and we believe that we've come with a very good legislative piece in terms of how to address that. There's far too many stories. I mean, as a matter of fact, last week, I'll give you an example of a story. So we have a family, so that's husband and wife and children. The husband is the primary breadwinner. The husband has had SZV insurance, did an excellent job at work apparently, got a promotion, which put him now over the SZV limit. But then what happens is one of the children turns out has a pre-existing condition. So now by the parent, the breadwinner, rising above the SZV limit, no longer had access to the SZV insurance, so had to go on the private market to buy insurance. No problem, he can buy insurance, but the child, because it had a pre-existing condition, the pre-existing condition would be excluded from the insurance policy, right? Something's fundamentally wrong with our system when we have these kinds of stories. So what are the choices that the family has to face? Well, they could deny the promotion, and as a matter of fact, this is a story that I've heard throughout the community, that people who have SZV, because they have a health illness, have denied promotions and the raise that went with them in order to remain within the SZV limit. They could also choose to divorce. So we could break the family apart so that the children could then stay with the mother and then get the health insurance via the mother. Or they could come and apply for a pay card, which means ultimately that the government ends up financing it directly out of its revenues. So when we look at our healthcare system, and that's on top of all of the other incidents where you have sole proprietors who can't access insurance. We have people I know who they're over the SZV limit, but because of pre-existing conditions, can't qualify for SZV. And then you find that when you audit the companies, they cook their books or they manipulate it so that somehow they can fall within the SZV. We have too many issues, and we need to come with a more unified system where everybody pays their fair share and everyone can have access to health insurance, right? We're working, I believe the legislation makes the system more efficient, more effective, more equitable, and I believe also financially sustainable. In the long run, as we look at our healthcare costs, It is in every country a high expense in every country's budget. And I believe we have, again, a system that is financially sustainable, but it does require some changes in the community, and people, unfortunately, as much as they say they want to change, they don't want the change to affect them directly. So that's why we've enlisted the assistance of PAHO to help us with these discussions within the community, because they're third-party experts. They bring a wealth of information, a wealth of experience in terms of what's happened everywhere else in the world. You know, we're not unique in the world. This is a process that's happening actually within the kingdom. All the other territories within the kingdom already have a form of universal health insurance. We're actually the last ones to join in. And so we have the benefit of learning from the others what they did right and what they've done wrong. And again, we're bringing in health professionals to help explain this to our stakeholders in the community. So I'd like to give a big thanks to PAHO. As I mentioned, they'll be here attached to the disaster conference, so the 11th and 12th of March, and as well as the beginning of April. And so we are going to, as ministry now, as we approach the final stages of the legislative process, reach out to the community, because I know it is a very complicated piece of legislation. There's a lot of changes involved in it, and we would certainly like to have that discussion in smaller settings within the community. So anyone who's interested in arranging these sessions with the ministry, and also if they're interested in having those sessions supported by or mediated by the assistance of PAHO, reach out to the Ministry of Public Health and help us to coordinate those meetings, and we'd be happy to facilitate those public discussions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister Lee, for your opening remarks. The Minister of Finance, the Honorable Perry Hearlings, is present at this morning's press briefing, however, will not be making any opening statements, but is available for any questions the member of the media may have. We now move on to the question and answer session. Stephen Cerillion of PJ82 Radio, you have the floor.
Excellencies, good morning. My question is for the Minister of Health. You painted such a beautiful picture as it pertains to SZV, PAHO, and the healthcare situation. You mentioned the SZV limit, but what you failed to do was, what's that limit?
$60,000 something guilders. I need to double check it for you, but I can come back to you what exactly is the limit. Let me send a WhatsApp and I'll come back to you later.
Thank you, Minister Lee. Lyndon Brown of BCN TV, you have the floor.
Good morning to the people of St. Martin. Question to Minister Johnson. There have been a lot of talks and controversy with the airport. According to your presentation just now, things are getting better. And you need to distinguish. Some people saying rebuilding of the airport, some people saying refurbishing. Now, what are you seeing down the line? Maybe 1 year from now, how the airport is looking like?
Thank you, Mr. Brown, for your question. Of course, I envision like the entire coalition, all members of the Council of Ministers, all members of Parliament, see a fully restored terminal building with the long-term vision, of course, inclusive of having an FBO completed, a fire station and emergency service building finalized, and of course, USP clearance, a part of that overall restoration and vision plan necessary for the country, necessary for the economic revitalization of this country, and of course, repositioning our hub function as the #1 regional airport in the Northeastern Caribbean.
Thank you, Minister Johnson.
Sorry, Stephen, the maximum for Zeve Ove on an annual basis is 67,816.32 guilders. That's on an annual basis. Per month, 5,651.36 cents. Remember, this is gross, right? So sometimes people get confused versus their net pay versus their gross, yeah?
Thank you, Minister Lee. Andrew Bishop of St. Martin News Online, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Ministers, good morning. Minister, No, I'm talking to Prime Minister first. Prime Minister, we have a situation here at Foga. I am now seeing the Minister of Responsible for Public Works. Since the buildings were put down after hurricanes of 1995, nothing has been done with the roads. Could you tell me if the government has policy on that? What are they going to do? I understand the place is owned by somebody else. I want to know if you will be able to do something about the roads, because it is right now in a very deplorable condition.
Thank you, Andrew, for that question. Indeed, the Minister of Romi is not here. I can state that he is ill. He's been ill for the past 2 days, and that's why he's not here at press briefing. Thank you for bringing the FOGA to my attention. As soon as the press briefing is finished, I will make sure that I address the SG about your concerns, and then I will make sure that information gets back to the public as it relates to what is going to be the plan for that FOGA road. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Minister.
Thank you, Prime Minister. We now move on to the second round of questions. Stephen Cerulean, you have the floor.
Thank you, Minister of Finance. St. Martin now has a director on the Central Bank of Curacao and St. Martin. Can you provide some more information based on the information provided by the Central Bank? St. Martin now has a director at the local office in St. Martin.
Good morning to the press corps and my colleagues. Thank you, Stephen, for that question. Yes, that is indeed so. The central bank appointed a local branch director, and it was done recently. I wouldn't know what else you want me to tell you, because you asked me to confirm that message, and that is so. The person, I think it was already in the press and in the social media. I think that's what you're referring to, Mr. Cerulean. But this lady, her last occupation was the RBC branch manager. I think it would be a good thing to explain the situation. First of all, if you look at what is out there, the appointment of, for instance, the board of directors of the central bank itself, the main branch in Curacao, is something that is done not in collaboration, but advice is sought from the various governments, Curacao and St. Martin, on the appointment of the board of directors. Where appointment of branch managers is concerned, that is something that is completely under the flag of the central bank itself. It's an internal procedure, and government has no dealings with that. There might be occasions where candidates are being vetted or being made known, but in essence, government has nothing to do with no appointment of no branch manager. That is an internal and discrete process. So maybe it would be good for you and all the people of the press to direct that question also to the central bank for further verification. But your question is certainly appreciated. But I have one more thing to say on that, and that I find very disturbing, Stephen. If you look at the whatever is being written in the press and on social media, stating that the Surinamese minister in the cabinet of St. Martin is appointing a Surinamese, then I wonder, where are we going with this country? When I'm good for one, and the next day I cannot help one, then I'm all of a sudden a Surinamese. We are all St. Martiners here. We are all of the same nationality. So please, try to explain to me what this is all about. So I don't understand it. I see it as a cancer, which I already have mentioned in previous, the ethnic racism that we bestow upon ourselves, is so, breaking the progress that we are set to do as this government. And this is the only thing that we can talk about ethnicity of one another. But also for a fact, when you come out with information, please get your facts straight and try to find out where this young lady is from, okay? And I would leave it at that, but I'm very concerned about these sentiments in our society. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Heerlings. Lyndon Brown, you have the floor.
Good morning again to the people of St. Martin. Question to the Prime Minister. The people of St. Martin are saddened as I speak. Sometimes the people feel things are not balanced. Some recent days, a week, Prime Minister, there was an article in the Trinidad newspaper, and it goes like this. A container have been intercepted with illegal substance and food heading destined for St. Martin. Now, the leader of your party, Theo Heidegger, have been arrested. The sentiment of the people is like things are not balanced. Well, the Minister of Justice is not here today. Have anybody been arrested for that allegation? They, according to the newspaper, they had an address here in St. Martin. But we are seeing other arrests happening here in St. Martin. So what the people are emphasizing, it should be justice for one and justice for all. Minister, would you please respond to this statement, question?
Mr. Brown, indeed, I read the article and heard it on the news about the container, and I believe the police department has given a response on such. I would have to ask for an update on the information. I'm sure that an investigation is going on. Again, we have a justice system here in St. Martin. I'm sure that they will not put it aside and ensure that they find out exactly who that container was going to. Indeed, justice for one, justice for all. We have democracy here in St. Martin, so we expect that all levels of investigations will be conducted and results will be known within short or within soon.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Andrew Bishop, you have the floor.
Minister of Tourism, we have the situation, I understand that the CEO at the airport is concerned about the appointment of FSO. What could you tell me about that?
The appointment, thank you, Mr. Bishop, for your question. The appointment of someone in this position, of course, is the prerogative of the holding company and the board. So I have confidence in them following the proper procedure and, of course, them being able to do it in a transparent way.
Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Johnson. We now move on to the third round of questions. Stephen Cerillion, you have the floor.
Prime Minister, my question is for you. The situation with the old administration building and the post office, the fire department is gone. Those buildings are still standing up following the damages caused by Hurricane Irma. What is government's plans for those two buildings I mentioned?
Thank you for that question. I do know that we were in talks with APS. I just have to follow up on those talks to see where we're at this current moment. And then again, I will make sure that the information is revealed to the general public.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Lyndon Brown.
Question to the Minister of Finance. Minister, do you have any statistic? What's the status of the finances of St. Martin?
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Interesting question. The status of the finance of St. Martin is we are in a deficit. That is the status. And what we are doing, though, is monthly we can show that we are progressing to eat away at that deficit. Country St. Martin is moving, you know, slowly but steadily into the right direction. And as the financial recovery plan written by my ministry, if we can put that to work the way we have foreseen, this trend will continue, and hopefully by 2021, 2022, we should be able to show first surplus on our budget. But having said that, maybe it's also good to share with you. I really would like for the people to realize that Country St. Martin is still in a state of emergency. And what concerns me at times is that I see around me that it's, you know, business as usual. And it is not business as usual. This government is working really hard to make ends meet and to reach that point of surplus ASAP. But in society, you know, it is like, you know, nothing ever happened. But we are confronted on a daily basis with the downside of the hurricanes that struck our island. So this is still an emergency state. So having said that, I would like for the people of St. Martin, the government apparatus, and everybody there to continue bearing the responsibility to get our country on track as soon as possible. And we can go around and it looks all nice and the ships are in and the planes are coming in. With all that money, we are catching up of huge outstanding debts, you know, and you see already that people want to discuss pay raise and, you know, with all due respect, how are we going to finance? Just to name an example. So again, Mr. Brown, thank you for the question, but we are still in a state of emergency, also financially. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Heerlings. Andrew Bishop, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Minister Smith, quite recently there was an incident at one of the schools where a student stole a car from a teacher. What is ever going to happen with that case? We understand it's been under investigation. What are your thoughts on this?
Thank you, Mr. Bishop. Indeed, that incident took place. The student is, according to school regulations, has been suspended, and that is being reviewed by the Division of Inspection also as to the future of the student. We're working with the school. For example, tomorrow and Friday, there will be a training program for all teachers whereby they would receive training in behavioral management, how to deal with children in the classroom, on the playground. And we are also looking at other things that we'll be doing with that school to ensure to improve it and to bring it up. But the investigation is ongoing, and as soon as the results are completed, we'll be able to finalize that aspect with the student.
Thank you, Minister Smith.
Thank you, Minister Smith.
We now move on to the fourth round of questions. Stephen Cerulean, you have the floor.
Minister of Tourism, St. Martin will be playing host to SMART after a 2-year layoff, I think. Who is invited to this year's regional trade show, and what kind of a collaboration is there between the Dutch and French side, taking into consideration the fact that French St. Martin is hosting?
Thank you, Stephen, for the question. Of course, as you've seen in today's media announcements, SMART registration has started already, the early registration, to ensure not only local participation, regional and international, but again, we must realize that we are cohesively working together with our counterparts of French St. Martin. I have daily contact with the Vice President of the collectivity of the French side of St. Martin, who's also the President of the Tourist Office. So we are in complete unison in what we're going to do collectively with the destination, with the marketing, and of course with SMART and the support to SMART. Also, the interim director of the tourist office, Ms. Chun, and I also have regular contact, and we're also working diligently to ensure that we incorporate not only the best experience, some training and workshops during the SMART conference, as well as incorporating new technologies that we want to also show our partners in the industry.
Who is invited?
Like I said, regional, local, and international partners. So that includes everyone that will be a part of the trade floor, as well as those who are interested locally as well. Hoteliers, etc. Airlines, the entire industry is open to operators, you name it. When I say everyone, I mean by extension all relating to tourism.
Thank you, Minister Johnson. Lyndon Brown, you have the floor.
Question to Minister Lee. Minister Lee, over the past months, there was discussion on medical marijuana. Has there still a discussion, and what is the way forward? Is it necessary for St. Martin?
Thank you for the question. Indeed, the ministry is working on a policy for medical marijuana. The initial discussions are that within our existing legislation, we have possibilities to make provisions for the medical use of marijuana. And I want to make sure that we're very clear about this, because I've received a number of correspondences, people who are interested in all of a sudden starting farms here and selling, opening coffee shops, right? There's a big difference between medical marijuana, because there is literature that shows that there are, for certain illnesses, for certain treatments, that there's a value to the medicinal use of marijuana. Even they have medical marijuana that basically doesn't have a narcotic effect. It doesn't have that same effect as if you smoke the marijuana, right? So there's a big difference between medical marijuana and the decriminalization of recreational use of marijuana, right? So I think it's something that the community needs to understand very clearly, right? So when we talk about the use of marijuana, the medical use of marijuana, it would be, again, prescribed by a physician, not that anyone could just go and just buy off-the-shelf marijuana, right? So,
Minister Lee, make it clear. So,
Mr. Brown, can we allow the minister to finish
Is in the
his
same
statement?
topic?
Just let
let me
him
finish.
finish.
Yes. So within our current policy, within our current legislation, the ministry is working on policies in order to permit how it would be used and incorporated into our system. If we want to pursue, I understand that in many countries, one of the first steps towards the decriminalization of marijuana begins with the medical marijuana, but that is a different legislative track. That is a different track and would require a change in legislation. So just to be very, very clear.
You may follow
yeah,
up.
so what I was saying, so is not make it clear to the people of St. Martin, because there's some misconception. The people are thinking that they can be farmers of marijuana. So make it clear so that people can understand, so they're just waiting maybe to plant.
So to be clear, what we are talking about is not about the cultivation of marijuana. We're not talking about the recreational use of marijuana. We're not talking about being able to light up on the street coffee shops. None of that is in our discussions at the moment. We are talking about the medical use of marijuana, which has, again, internationally, through different studies, shown that there are health benefits in certain cases.
Thank you, Minister Lee. Andrew Bishop, you have the final question.
Question to the Prime Minister. I understand that the government website is down. Could you give me an update on that, please?
As we speak, I believe they have just went live, and they're working on whatever issues that they had with well, at least what the company had. I believe it's with the server. So as we speak, I believe it's today they're supposed to go live, so I will check on it right now. It has been a very big concern, I think, for the last 3 weeks, and we've been making sure that we didn't lose any information. I know the Department of DCOM has been very busy with the company and ensuring that all of the information that was on the website before remains there.
Thank you, Prime Minister.
Thank you, Prime Minister, for your response. Honorable Ministers of the Council, members of the media, radio listeners, and online viewers, this brings us to the end of the live Council of Ministers press briefing for today, Wednesday, February 20th, 2019. For rebroadcast, tune in every evening at 7 p.m. on St. Martin Cable TV. For video on demand, log on to the official government's website at www.stmartingov.org. On behalf of the Department of Communication, I'm Rolika Roach, and do have a pleasant day further.